Well, I'm making another framed fine art piece, and the picture I'm doing, I shot in Anza-Borrego Desert a little while back. It's a 6x17 shot I made on Kodak Portra 160 film. And this picture is a pretty subtle picture. It doesn't have the super epic colors. It's not wide angle. The contrast isn't super high. It's not your typical epic landscape composition. It's much more understated. And the reason I'm doing that is because the more printing I do over the years, the more I'm realizing that the stuff I want hanging on my own walls is the subtle, understated stuff. Now, I've been going back and forth on how big to do it. And whenever I can't decide how big to go, I find it's a good idea to cut the full dimensions of the piece out of craft paper and hang it on the wall so I can actually see how big it is in person before I go through the trouble of actually getting it done. And having done that, I think 6 feet wide is going to be right. 2 feet tall by 6 feet wide. And the way I'm scanning it is on my Epson V750 scanner using Silverfast software. And then I'm going to put that file into Lightroom and do all my color and curves adjustments there. The negative you'll see is mounted up on some ground glass using blue painter's tape. And it's going to be turned upside down and scanned using these little shims as risers to get it to the proper focus distance. So the print itself is going to be a C-type print, which means it's not inkjet. It's a wet process print that can only be done at a pro lab. And I'm doing that because the quality just blows inkjet out of the water. And the paper I'm going to use is Fuji Pearl because it gives it a really awesome glow. And then I'm going to have the lab laminate it with a luster lamination, which actually takes the gloss out of it. As far as actual scanner settings, the resolution I'm going to do at 4800 pixels per inch. And then I'll make some curves and tonal adjustments in the scanner software, but I'm not going to get it perfect in the software. I'm just going to get it close. And then I'll fine tune it, get it perfect in Lightroom. I'm going to scan it at the 48-bit setting on the scanner so that I can end up with a 16-bit TIFF, which I will then put into Lightroom and do my further edits. But you always do pre-scan first, tweak it that way, and then do the final scan. The final scan takes quite a long time, so I got my pre-scan here, I got to make my edits, and then I'll get the real scan going. Alright, so the full res file is scanning right now, and it's going to take a little while because it's such a high resolution scan and it's a pretty big negative. But then I'll have the raw file ready to bring into Lightroom. So the next step is importing into Lightroom, tweaking the curves to get the colors right and to get the tonalities right, and then the next step is cleaning the dust, which I just don't want to tackle right now because that's going to be time consuming. So we'll do it another day. Alright, so we fast forwarded a little bit here. Last time I saw you, we were scanning the negative, and that was 3 weeks ago. I was originally going to show you the process of cleaning the file of all of its dust, prepping it for print, sizing it down, sending it off to the lab, but I decided to skip that process. And the reason I did is because that process ended up being a much bigger hassle than I anticipated, and I just didn't want to operate a video camera while I was doing it. The raw file scanned was 340 megapixels, comprising over 2 gigabytes of information. So cleaning the dust on it was just making my computer just seize up and slow down. It never made it crash, but it made it just an absolute nightmare to work on. So I didn't show you that process, but rest assured, I spent countless hours cleaning the dust on this file, because when it's 340 megapixels, every tiny little bit of dust and scratch shows up. So I have the print, it's done. I had a Pro-Photo Connection, my lab in Irvine, mount it on 3/4 inch gator board, which is what this is. And they put this edge tape on it, this black edge tape, which seals up around the side. Gives it a nice clean finish. And then I've made these risers, these wooden blocks, which is just cheap wood I picked up at Home Depot, painted it black, and that's going to give me another 3/4 inch for a total of 1.5 inches from print to the back of the print. And that's because I'm putting it into a float frame, which is designed for 1.5 inch canvas. I've measured out where the blocks need to go and then just super glue them down so that I have my risers and I can then mount the frame. The next step is actually one of the most tedious and frustrating parts of this whole thing. I've designed this piece to have a 1/4 inch gap between the print and the frame, and getting it perfectly even all the way around is nearly impossible. The frame isn't perfectly square, the print isn't perfectly square, so it's a lot of nudging it back and forth just a little bit at a time, trying to get that gap as even as possible all the way around. Once I have it aligned, I use a pencil to mark the back side so that when I flip it over, I know where to line the frame up. I start by securing just the corner so I can flip the piece over and check my work real quick, make sure I got the gap right, before I secure the entire frame. So the frame attaches to the back of the print with these little offset clips, and they work great, they hold it on just fine, but the problem I'm running into right now is this long dimension of the frame is so long that it's actually bowing out away from the print. So I need to find a way to kind of suck this down, kind of push the frame towards the print a little bit to make the gap nice and even. But the problem with these offset clips is they only have one hole in it. So I had to drill some holes in a couple of these clips, and I'll be using those to basically put a screw in both of them. So I'll put a screw on the blocks and on the frame so that I can position it wherever I want. Alright, the frame is now attached. That part's done, so all that's left to do is attach the hanging hardware. So I have to put a D-ring at each end and then thread some picture frame wire through. But once that's done, this puppy will be ready to hang on the wall and see how it actually looks. So there it is. That's a big one. It's definitely big. 6 feet wide, 2 feet tall. Nice big piece to really make the most out of that 6x17 negative. Lots of great detail in here. Now this piece is not like a lot of modern landscape photography. Seems like most modern landscape photography is make it as colorful as possible, super wide angle, basically make it the most epic landscape you can. And this is kind of the other end of things. It's much more subtle, understated, kind of a simpler color palette with not nearly as much saturation. Now the reason I did that is I feel like a good fine art piece shouldn't overpower a room, it should accent it. And I feel like those super colorful compositions oftentimes overpower the space. Now I know every photographer wants their artwork to be the centerpiece of someone's room. It's something the whole room revolves around. But if you're being realistic, that's probably not what most people want. People have other things in mind for their space. They've picked out furniture, they've picked out wall colors, they've picked out carpet, they've picked out other art pieces, and they need it all to mesh together to create a nice big unifying look in the whole room. I feel like something understated like this with a simpler color palette can more easily slip into someone's decor and accent it rather than completely change it and overpower it. Now I mean it when I say it, that this is what photography is really about. It's about getting prints made, getting them framed, hanging them on a wall. That's where you're going to get your real satisfaction in photography. Taking a picture and then just uploading the file to Instagram, hoping people are going to like it before they flip on to the next picture in under half a second, that kind of satisfaction, that's nothing compared to the satisfaction you get from having a print made hanging on the wall. So get out there, get some high quality prints made, frame them up, and feel good about them. Because this is what photography is all about. Getting the print hanging on the wall.